In this video, we're going to discuss the properties of parallelograms. Parallelograms have a lot of properties, so you're going to want to make sure that you remember them, maybe memorize them. So for a parallelogram, notice in our picture here, these on the left are parallelograms. So I have these sides which are parallel, and I have these sides which are parallel. And we notice I have two pair of parallel sides in all of these that we're going to call parallelograms. Over here, these are not parallelograms. So even though in this first figure I have two sets of opposite sides that are parallel, this has too many sides because a parallelogram is a special type of quadrilateral, and we recall that quadrilaterals only have four sides. This one is a quadrilateral. It doesn't have any pair of parallel sides, and this one only has one pair of parallel sides, which we know is a trapezoid. So for a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both pair of opposite sides parallel. Alright, so over in our picture, this pair of sides is going to be parallel, and this pair of sides is going to be parallel. So once we take our quadrilateral and we make both pair of opposite sides parallel, a lot of things are going to happen. Alright, so let's skip over to our properties here. So here's our first two parallelogram properties dealing with angles. So let's go ahead and mark our picture here. If we were to measure these with a protractor, we would see that this opposite pair are congruent and this opposite pair are also congruent. So opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. Alright, then let's take a look at consecutive angles. So let's label these angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. So consecutive angles are one right after the other. Okay, so this could be 1 and 2, or it could be 2 and 3, 3 and 4, or 4 and 1. So those are all the different pairs of consecutive angles. And we can see that if I pick any pair of consecutive angles, let's say 1 and 4, angle 1 is obtuse, angle 4 is acute, so we know they're not going to be congruent. However, they are going to be supplementary. Alright, so we've got that the opposite angles are congruent, the consecutive angles are supplementary. Again, look at the size of the angles that are consecutive, or we might say adjacent, and see that one is obtuse and one is acute, and therefore they can't be congruent, but they can be supplementary. Alright, and then let's move on to properties based on sides. So again, opposite sides. So if we were to measure these, we would see that these two were the same length and that these two were the same length. So the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So now we have that the opposite sides and the opposite angles are congruent. And let's talk about the diagonals. If I draw in the diagonals here, now a common mistake here is to say that the diagonals are congruent, but hopefully you can see how this diagonal, let's label this A, B, C, D, diagonal AC is going to be longer than BD, right? But these diagonals do divide each other equally, so the diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. Alright, so these are the properties. We have a lot of properties. Make sure that you know them. We have 5 properties, which we'll wrap up in another video, but make sure you know these so that you can solve problems As always, make sure you get your questions answered, and we'll see you next time.